Most people spend their entire life blaming their income. They think that if they could just make a little more money, everything would change. They'd be free. They'd be safe. They'd finally be ahead. But let me ask you something. Do you know people who earn more than you who are still broke? Do you know people who earn less than you who somehow never seem to worry about money? The difference isn't income. The difference is the game they're playing. And right now, you're playing the wrong game. That's not an insult. That's a diagnosis. And by the end of this video, you're going to understand exactly what game you've been playing, why it was designed to keep you exactly where you are, and how to switch games entirely, using principles that a 15th century political strategist figured out 500 years before modern finance even existed. Most people will never hear this, not because it's hidden, because it's uncomfortable. Because the game you've been playing your whole life feels like reality. It isn't. Let's start. Here's the first thing you need to understand. The financial system most people operate inside was not designed for you to win. That sounds like a conspiracy. It isn't. It's just design. Every game has rules, and whoever wrote the rules wrote them to serve themselves. The game most people are playing looks like this. You work, you earn, you spend, you repeat. Sometimes you save a little. Sometimes you invest in a retirement account you're not allowed to touch for 40 years. You get raises that match inflation if you're lucky. You celebrate when you get a bonus. And every month, no matter how much you earn, the math somehow works out to zero. Or negative. This is not an accident. This is the design. The game is called the income game. And in the income game, the primary metric of your financial life is how much money comes in. More income equals more power. That's what you were taught. That's what everyone around you believes. That's why people kill themselves chasing promotions, side hustles, overtime, second jobs. Income feels like the answer because it's visible, it's measurable, it shows up on your paycheck, it's easy to compare to your neighbor. But income is not power, control is, and that distinction will change everything if you actually sit with it. Pause for a second. Think about what it would mean if income and power were actually two different things. If someone could have a lower income than you and more financial power than you at the same time. Because that is exactly what is happening right now to millions of people. The system is built around a simple psychological trick. Make income the visible scoreboard so that the invisible scoreboard, which is control, cash flow, optionality, and leverage, stays hidden. When the scoreboard everyone watches is income, people compete to earn more without ever asking where it goes, who controls it, or what it's producing while they sleep. Banks measure your wealth by income. Your employer controls you through income. The government taxes you on income. Marketers design products specifically sized to just fit inside your income. Everyone in the system benefits from your obsession with income, except you. Now, 500 years ago, a man named Niccolò Machiavelli was writing about power. Not the power of money specifically, but the structure of power in general. How it's acquired, how it's maintained, how it's lost. And what's remarkable is that almost everything he wrote about political power maps directly onto financial power, because financial power and political power follow the same laws. They always have. Machiavelli wasn't a villain. He was an observer, a ruthlessly honest observer of how the world actually works, not how people wish it worked. He was a diplomat, a strategist, a bureaucrat who spent years watching princes rise and fall, and he started writing down the patterns. One of his core observations was this: most people confuse the appearance of power with power itself. A prince who looks strong but depends on others for his strength is not strong. He is one betrayal away from losing everything. Sound familiar? Someone who looks wealthy because they drive a nice car and live in a nice house, but whose lifestyle depends entirely on their next paycheck, is not wealthy. They are one layoff away from collapse. Machiavelli would have recognized them immediately. He would have said, "This person has the appearance of a prince, but the vulnerability of a mercenary." And mercenaries, he wrote, are useless in real danger because their loyalty is to their paycheck, not to the mission. When the paycheck disappears, so do they. The person addicted to income is a mercenary in their own financial life. Machiavelli also wrote about what he called virtue, which is often mistranslated as virtue, but really means something closer to strategic capability, the ability to act decisively and correctly in the face of uncertainty. Fortune, he wrote, is a river that floods. You cannot stop the flood, but you can build levees before it comes. The people who get destroyed are not necessarily the ones facing the worst floods. They're the ones who built nothing while the weather was good. This is the most accurate description of financial recklessness I've ever read, and it was written in 1513. While the weather is good, meaning while the income is flowing, most people build nothing. They consume. They perform wealth. They mistake the absence of crisis for security. And then when the flood comes, the layoff, the medical bill, the recession, they lose everything because they built no levees. The wrong game is living without levees. The right game is building them before you need them. Let me make this concrete with a story. I want you to picture two people. Call them Alex and Marcus. They're the same age, same city, roughly similar background. Alex earns $90,000 a year working in corporate marketing. Marcus earns $65,000 a year doing freelance design work. By the income scoreboard, Alex is winning. Better salary, more status, nicer title on LinkedIn. But let's look at the other scoreboard. Alex spends $4,000 a month on rent for an apartment that matches his income. He drives a car with a payment because it fits his salary bracket. He eats out 5 nights a week because he can afford it. He tells himself he'll start investing when he earns more. His savings rate is maybe 3%. He has about $4,000 in savings. One bad month wipes him out. His entire lifestyle is structured around the assumption that the paycheck keeps coming. The paycheck is a dependency. Marcus lives in a smaller apartment. He drives an old car that's paid off. His expenses are structured around $35,000 a year, even though he earns $65,000. The gap, $30,000 a year, goes into assets, an index fund, a small rental unit he bought with a partner 3 years ago, a cash reserve covering 9 months of expenses. Marcus's income is lower. Marcus's control is dramatically higher. Marcus can say no to clients he doesn't like. Alex cannot say no to his boss. Marcus can take a month off if he needs to. Alex cannot miss 2 weeks without panic. If both of them lost their income tomorrow, Marcus survives for 9 months without changing his life. Alex survives for 3 weeks. Same city, same generation, completely different game. The difference isn't talent. It's not luck. It's not even income. It's the game they chose to play, and most importantly, the rules they chose to follow inside that game. Pause for a second. I want you to ask yourself honestly, which game are you playing right now? And more importantly, who designed the rules you're following? Because here's what most people never examine. They inherited their financial operating system from their parents, their school, their culture, and their employer. Nobody sat you down and said, here are the rules of the income game, and here's why those rules benefit the institutions around you more than they benefit you. It just happened. Through osmosis, through watching what adults did, through a school system that taught you history and literature, but never taught you how compound interest actually works, or what a balance sheet is, or how to think about optionality. You absorb the game without choosing it, and you've been playing it ever since. The good news is that awareness is the first move. You can't switch games you don't know you're playing. So let's talk about the actual game, the one that builds real financial power. These are not hacks. These are not get-rich-quick schemes. These are structural changes to how you think about money, rooted in the same logic Machiavelli applied to the structure of lasting power. Strategy 1. Stop measuring income. Start measuring control. The first rule of the right game is changing your primary metric. Right now, if someone asks how you're doing financially, you probably reference your income. I make this much. I got a raise. I'm looking for a higher-paying job. But income is a flow. It moves through you. Control is a position. It stays with you. The real financial question is not how much comes in. It's how much of what comes in do you actually control? Control means how much of your income is not already committed before you touch it. Rent, subscriptions, car payments, minimum payments, obligations. All of that is income you never actually had. Control is what's left. Machiavelli wrote that a prince who relies on fortresses built by others has no real defense. If someone else controls the walls, you're not safe inside them. Your lifestyle expenses are walls built by others. Your landlord controls the rent wall. Your lender controls the car payment wall. Every recurring commitment you made when income was flowing is a wall you don't control. The first move in the right game is building your own walls. That means your savings rate is not a bonus. It's not leftover. It's the first allocation. Before lifestyle, before entertainment, before anything. You pay yourself first, and you do it automatically, so the decision doesn't rely on willpower. Strategy 2. Design your lifestyle. Around 60% of your income. This is the structural move that separates the right game from the wrong one. Whatever you earn, design your actual lifestyle to cost no more than 60% of your after-tax income. Not 80, not 90, 60. The remaining 40% becomes your strategic reserve, 20% to assets, 10% to cash reserve, 10% to what Machiavelli would call optionality, the ability to act when opportunities appear. This sounds simple, and it is. The reason most people don't do it isn't ignorance, it's social pressure. The income game is also a social game. When your income rises, everyone around you expects your lifestyle to rise with it. Your friends expect nicer restaurants. Your family expects a bigger house. Your own identity often expects better clothes. And so every raise gets immediately consumed by lifestyle inflation, which means your control level never actually improves, even though your income does. Machiavelli was ruthless about this. He wrote that the prince who spends beyond his means will eventually be forced to burden his people, which breeds hatred. The prince who spends within his means builds reserves that allow him to act with generosity at the right moment, which breeds loyalty. The financial translation: spending less than you earn when times are good is not deprivation. It's the accumulation of strategic capacity. It's building the levees before the flood. Pause for a second. Every lifestyle upgrade you resist right now is not a sacrifice. It's a transfer. You're transferring that value from present consumption to future control. That's not suffering. That's strategy. Strategy 3. Understand the difference between assets and props. This is where Machiavelli's distinction between real power and the appearance of power becomes most financially relevant. Most people accumulate props. Props are things that look like wealth but produce no wealth. A nice car is a prop. An expensive watch is a prop. A bigger apartment than you need is a prop. Props have a specific psychological function. They signal to others and to yourself that you are winning the income game. They are costly in two ways. First, they cost money directly. Second, and more importantly, they cost opportunity. Every dollar spent on a prop is a dollar that cannot become an asset. Assets are different. Assets produce value whether you work or not. A rental property produces rent. An index fund produces returns. A business you've built produces income. A skill that others will pay for produces leverage. Machiavelli's greatest princes were not the ones who looked powerful. They were the ones who had built structures that produced power independently of their daily effort. The prince who had to personally manage every battle was vulnerable. The prince who had built systems, alliances, and institutions that operated without his constant presence had real power. Your financial life should work the same way. The goal is not to look like you're winning. The goal is to build systems that produce value without requiring your constant labor. Every asset you acquire is a soldier you don't have to pay an effort. Every prop you buy is a costume that costs you a soldier. Strategy 4. Protect your optionality, like your life depends on it. One of Machiavelli's most underrated observations is about the danger of necessity. He wrote that necessity forces men into courses they would never otherwise take. When you are financially desperate, when you have no reserve, no alternative, no exit, you will accept terrible terms. You will take a job you hate because you have no savings. You will stay in a bad situation because you can't afford to leave. You will make short-term decisions that damage your long-term position because short-term survival is the only game on the board. Optionality is the antidote to necessity. Optionality means you have choices, and choices require resources. This is why the cash reserve is not optional, not an emergency fund that you'll set up someday. A cash reserve that exists right now, liquid, accessible, and large enough to give you meaningful time. 6 months minimum. 9 months is better. Not because emergencies are common, but because emergencies remove your power to negotiate, and negotiation is where financial leverage lives. Think about what changes when you have 9 months of expenses in cash. You can leave a bad job without desperation. You can negotiate your next contract from a position of patience. You can wait for the right opportunity instead of jumping at the first available one. You can say no to bad deals. Saying no is one of the most valuable financial skills that exists, and it's only available to people with options. Machiavelli understood this. He wrote that the man who has no alternatives must accept what fate gives him. Build alternatives before you need them. Strategy 5. Learn to think in decades, not months. The income game is a short game. It operates month to month, paycheck to paycheck, year to year at best. The right game is a long game, and long games require different thinking. Most people overestimate what 1 year of good financial behavior will do, and dramatically underestimate what 10 years of consistent financial behavior will do. This is because compound growth is not linear. It doesn't feel like anything is happening for the first several years. And then it starts to feel like a lot is happening. And then it starts to feel like you can't stop it even if you tried. Einstein reportedly called compound interest the eighth wonder of the world. Whether he said it or not, the math is real. 30 years of consistent investment at average market returns turns what looks like small monthly contributions into numbers that seem impossible in year one. But the people who benefit from that math are not the people who figured it out in year 20. They're the people who started in year one, when nothing felt like it was working. Machiavelli observed that the prince who thinks only about present danger never builds lasting security. He is always reacting, never positioning. The prince who positions himself correctly for the long game can absorb short-term losses without being destroyed by them, because his foundation is built for decades, not days. Financial positioning for the long game means always invest something, even when markets are down, especially when markets are down. Automate it so it doesn't depend on your mood. Never stop. Not in a recession. Not in a job loss if you can help it. Not when the news is terrifying. The people who stopped in 2008 missed the recovery. The people who kept going rebuilt everything and more. Time is the most powerful financial tool that exists, and most people waste it waiting for certainty that never comes. Strategy. 6. Understand who benefits from your financial confusion. This is the Machiavellian strategy most people skip because it's uncomfortable. Machiavelli said, to understand what is happening, ask who benefits. Apply this to your own financial confusion. Who benefits from you not understanding compound interest? Every lender. Credit cards make their money on the gap between what you think you're paying and what you're actually paying. Who benefits from you measuring wealth by income instead of by assets? Your employer, who can motivate you with raises that never actually change your position. Who benefits from you not having savings? Every institution that sells financial products, because people without savings make short-term decisions that are profitable for sellers and costly for buyers. Who benefits from you believing that wealth requires a high income? The entire system built around selling you shortcuts, the lottery, the get-rich-quick course, the cryptocurrency pump. All of it is only viable because the wrong game makes people desperate. Financial literacy is not just about knowing math. It's about understanding the incentive structures that surround you. Once you can see who benefits from your confusion, the confusion starts to dissolve. And once it dissolves, you stop making decisions that serve other people's interests and start making decisions that serve your own. Pause for a second. I'm not saying this to make you paranoid. I'm saying this to make you strategic. Machiavelli wasn't paranoid either. He was precise. He saw the world as it was, not as he wished it were, and that clarity let him navigate it better than almost anyone around him. You deserve the same clarity about your own financial life. Strategy. 7. Build one thing that earns while you sleep. This is the principle that separates financial independence from financial dependence in the most concrete way possible. Right now, when you stop working, does money stop coming in? For most people, the answer is yes. That's not wrong. That's just where you are in the game. But the direction you should be moving is toward having at least one asset that produces income or growth, independent of your daily effort. This could be a dividend-paying index fund. It could be a rental property. It could be a digital product you built once that sells repeatedly. It could be equity in a business that operates with or without you. Whatever form it takes, the goal is the same. At least one position in your financial life that doesn't require you to show up to produce value. Machiavelli called this building a state that does not depend entirely on the fortune or arms of another. A state meaning a position of security and power that has internal mechanisms for sustaining itself. When you have even one asset like this, your relationship with work changes completely. Work becomes a choice about contribution, not a necessity for survival. That shift in psychology produces better decisions, better negotiation, more patience, and more optionality. It doesn't happen overnight, but it starts with the first contribution, the first purchase, the first thing you build outside of your primary income stream. Strategy. 8. Your network is a financial asset. Treat it like one. Machiavelli wrote extensively about alliances, not friendships specifically, but strategic relationships. People who have incentives aligned with yours, who can open doors you can't open alone, whose knowledge supplements your gaps. In modern financial terms, your network is one of the highest leverage assets you own, and most people never develop it intentionally. The income game is largely a solo game. You compete individually for promotions. You negotiate individually for salary. You figure out investing alone, often badly. The right game is a networked game. The best investment opportunities don't get advertised to the general public. They get shared between people who trust each other. The best jobs aren't posted on job boards. They get filled before the posting goes up, through relationships. The best financial education isn't in any single book. It's distributed across the lived experience of dozens of people who've already navigated what you're navigating. Intentionally building relationships with people who are playing the right game is one of the highest return activities available to you. Not networking in the superficial sense of collecting business cards. Genuine relationships with people whose thinking you respect, whose track record you can observe, whose perspective on money comes from experience rather than theory. Find them, learn from them, add value to them. That network will produce returns you cannot model on a spreadsheet. Strategy. 9. Play differently in scarcity than you play in abundance. One of Machiavelli's most sophisticated observations is that the rules of strategy change depending on your position. A prince who is strong plays differently than a prince who is weak. A prince in crisis plays differently than a prince in peace. Applying fixed rules regardless of position is how people get destroyed. The financial equivalent. The strategy that's right when you have reserves is different from the strategy that's right when you have nothing. When you have nothing, the priority is survival and accumulation. This means cut everything that isn't essential. Build the cash reserve first before anything else. Take no risks that could eliminate you from the game entirely. Focus entirely on increasing the gap between income and expenses. When you have reserves, the priority shifts to positioning and leverage. This means increase your investment rate. Look for asymmetric opportunities. Take calculated risks that have large upside and limited downside. Build the assets that earn while you sleep. Most people apply the abundance strategy when they're in scarcity, taking on debt to fund a lifestyle that signals success they haven't built. And they apply the scarcity mentality in abundance, hoarding cash in savings accounts that lose value to inflation instead of deploying it into assets. Know which position you're actually in. Play accordingly. And always be honest with yourself about the difference. Strategy. 10. Redefine what winning means. This is the last and in some ways the most important strategy. The wrong game has a specific definition of winning. It looks like a high income, a prestigious title, a visible lifestyle, the symbols of success that get performed on social media and at family dinners. These aren't inherently bad, but they're not winning. They're the costume of winning. Real winning in the right game looks different and is much harder to perform publicly. It looks like a savings rate that would embarrass your colleagues. It looks like a used car and a fully funded investment account. It looks like saying no to the promotion that would require you to sacrifice equity for salary. It looks like patience when everyone around you is excited about something that doesn't make structural sense. It looks like boring consistency over a decade when the people around you are making dramatic moves that feel exciting but don't build anything. Machiavelli wrote that the prince who wins by appearing strong is not truly strong. The prince who is truly strong often does not need to appear so. Real financial power is quiet. It doesn't announce itself. It simply exists as optionality, as reserves, as assets, as the ability to act or not act from a position of genuine freedom. Redefine winning to match that, and then start playing toward it. Pause for a second. Let's bring all of this together. The wrong game measures income. The right game measures control. The wrong game builds lifestyle. The right game builds assets. The wrong game optimizes for appearance. The right game optimizes for optionality. The wrong game is played by the rules you inherited. The right game is played by rules you've examined and chosen. Machiavelli's core insight, across every page of everything he wrote, was that most people are defeated not by their enemies, but by their own confusion about the nature of the game they're playing. They are playing chess, but thinking it's checkers. They are optimizing for metrics that don't reflect the actual scoreboard. And the people who seem to win effortlessly, the ones who remain stable when the economy collapses, who seem to have more freedom than their income should logically allow, those people aren't lucky. They're playing a different game. They have been for years. And now you know what that game is. This is the part of the video where I want to slow down and ask you to think about something that most financial content never touches: the emotional dimension of the wrong game. Because here's what nobody talks about. The income game is not just a financial trap. It's an identity trap. When your financial self-worth is tied to your income, every salary comparison becomes an evaluation of your value as a person. Every financial setback becomes a judgment on who you are. Every period of lower income, whether it's a career transition, a health issue, a family responsibility, feels like a collapse of self, not just a temporary reduction in cash flow. This is why financial stress is so uniquely destructive. It's not just that money is tight. It's that the game you're playing has made money into the primary measure of your worth as a human being. And when that measure drops, the psychological damage is enormous. Machiavelli wrote about the danger of building your power on things that can be taken from you. Income can be taken from you. A layoff, a health crisis, an industry disruption, and the income disappears. If you have built your identity on that income, the identity disappears with it. The right game separates financial position from personal worth. It allows you to have bad financial periods without experiencing them as personal failures. It allows you to take career risks without feeling that your entire self-concept is on the line. And that psychological freedom, that separation between who you are and what you earn, is one of the most valuable outputs of playing the right game. It doesn't happen automatically. It requires a conscious decision to measure yourself by different things: by your savings rate, which is within your control; by your learning, which is within your control; by the strength of your relationships, your consistency, your patience, your ability to act strategically under pressure. These are measures of character, and character cannot be laid off. The people I admire most financially are not the highest earners I know. They're the most stable. The ones who move through financial storms with a calm that comes from having built actual foundations. They sleep well. They make decisions from a place of abundance rather than desperation. They are generous because they can be, not because they're performing generosity for status. They are selective about work because they can afford to be selective. They don't hate Mondays because work is a choice for them, not a sentence. That is what financial freedom actually looks like. Not the Instagram version with the pool and Bali, the real version. The version where the game you play every day is one you chose, with rules you understand, moving toward a definition of winning that you actually believe in. Machiavelli ended The Prince with a call to action. He had spent the entire book diagnosing why power structures fail, why princes fall, why kingdoms collapse into chaos. And at the end, after all of it, he said, "The time is now. The situation is clear. Act." Not because action is comfortable, not because the path is certain, but because understanding without action is the most expensive luxury of all. You can finish this video and understand everything I've said and do nothing with it. That's a choice. It's the choice most people make. Not because they're stupid or lazy, but because change is hard, and the income game has deep roots in your daily life, your social circle, your sense of self. Changing games means changing habits, and it often means changing how you look to the people around you. Your friends might not understand why you're driving a worse car than you could afford. Your family might not understand why you're not upgrading your apartment when your income went up. The external performance of the right game looks a lot like losing the wrong game, at least in the short term. You have to be okay with that. Machiavelli wrote that the prince who needs the approval of the crowd to feel secure in his power has no real power. The crowd's approval is the most volatile currency in existence. If your financial decisions require social validation, they will never be optimized for your actual interests. Play the right game. Explain it if you want to, but play it either way. Let me give you the clearest version of what switching games actually looks like in practical terms. It starts this week, not when income increases, not when circumstances are better, right now with what you have. Step 1. Calculate your actual control percentage. Take your after-tax income and subtract every committed expense: rent, subscriptions, minimums, obligations. What's left is what you actually control. If that number is less than 20%, that is the problem, not your income. Step 2. Identify the one lifestyle expense you would cut before you would cut your investment contribution. Make that commitment before the next check arrives. Step 3. Open an investment account if you don't have one. Automate a transfer the day your paycheck lands, even if it's $50. The amount matters less than the habit and the identity shift that comes with it. Step 4. List every prop in your life that's costing you money without producing anything. Not to feel guilty. To see clearly. The clarity is the tool. Step 5. Find one person in your life or accessible through what you're consuming who is visibly playing the right game and study how they make decisions. Not their income, their decisions. How they talk about spending, what they prioritize, what they say no to. Those decision patterns are the real curriculum. This is the game. These are the rules, not the inherited ones, the chosen ones. Machiavelli spent his life watching people fail because they followed rules they never examined, rules designed by someone else for someone else's benefit. You have access to 500 years of accumulated strategic thinking about how power actually works. You have access to more financial information than any generation in history. What you need is not more information. What you need is to decide which game you're playing, and then to actually play it. If this video changed how you think about income versus control, I want you to do one thing before you close this. Not subscribe, not like, though I appreciate both. One thing, write down the one move from this video you're going to make in the next 7 days, not someday, 7 days. Because Machiavelli was right about one more thing. Fortune favors the prepared. And preparation is not a feeling, it's an action. The people watching this who are still playing the wrong game in 5 years will not be the ones who didn't understand. They'll be the ones who understood and waited. Don't wait. The game is happening, whether you play strategically or not. If you want more content like this, strategy, financial psychology, the real mechanics of how power and money interact, subscribe. Every video on this channel is built around the same principle. Give you the framework that actually explains what's happening, not the comfortable version that keeps you passive. I'll see you in the next one.